In this video, we're going to take a look at some of the formulas and adjustments that you can use to record the repayment of a loan that you have. In order to keep it simple for this example so that we can make sure we get across the principles, we used a project forecast, so a forecast that we've created in a journal entity on SIPT so that we can just focus on this loan. But the principles that we're going to show you are still applicable if you need to repay a loan as part of a bigger forecast with many adjustments. So I hope that this will help you to go and process these adjustments in your forecast. So to start, we need to record the recognition of our loan. So we're going to add a quick adjustment within our balance sheet, add quick adjustment, loan. We're going to select the start date. We're going to say that it would just be a once-off adjustment, and we're going to populate it with a new value of 1.5 million. So this would be whatever the value of your loan is. If you've already got the loan in a previous period, you won't need to do the step as it will pull forward when SIPT creates your forecast based on whatever last period's values were or whatever last year's values were. Okay, so we've got our loan here, and you'll see that SIPT automatically goes and puts that money in our bank. But if we're planning to use that money for something else, we might then need to go and add an adjustment for that. So I'm going to add a quick adjustment for the building. I'm going to say I'm going to purchase it on the same date. I'm again going to purchase it only once, and it will also cost 1.5 million. And now you'll see it's not impacting my cash anymore because the money went straight from my loan to my building. Now, again, if you've already purchased the building in a previous year or you've already recorded the loan, you won't have to do this first step. It will just be there. But going forward, the steps will still be applicable to you. So on this loan, we now need to incur interest, and then we need to make loan repayments. So there's a few key pieces of information you need to know in order to make these adjustments. And one of those is obviously your interest rate. The other is your repayment amount. So once you've calculated those, or you should know those amounts from the bank, then you can go and make these adjustments. Now, obviously, this is a forecast, so you probably need to consider whether those are reasonable. If you expect the interest rate to change going forward, maybe adjust those. Perhaps you could have a best or worst case scenario, assuming that the interest rate goes up by 1% or down by 1%. And if you want to see how to do that scenario forecasting, you can look at our video where we consider scenario forecasting. But in this case, we're just going to look at one scenario when the interest rate is 9.5% and our installments are 19,409 Rand and 63 cents. Okay, the numbers are irrelevant. They obviously will differ based on your loan. It's just the principle. To start, we're going to record interest on our loan. So to do that, we're going to click on Add Advanced Adjustment. I'm going to click Interest Expense, and I'm going to say Interest on Loan. I'm then going to select my start date and my end date, which for me would be the end of the period. I'm going to select how often this should happen, and interest is usually incurred on a monthly basis, so we'd select every month. We're then going to select formula because we now need to create a formula that's going to calculate our interest. So the interest will always be calculated on the balance that you had in the previous period. So we're going to say, we're going to look for long-term liability, loan. We're going to say the prior loan times by, so we can click times, your interest rate. And remember, I said in my case, it's 0.095. But then we're going to do this on a monthly basis. So I need to divide it by 12. And so this formula now will encapsulate whatever the balance of the loan is, and it will times it by the interest rate. And so what's nice with this is if you have repayments on your loan, the interest will automatically update, and that applies for both the installments, which we're going to look at in a minute, and any additional repayments that you plan on making. So I can now click Save, and you'll see that my interest has updated. At this stage, it's the same amount every month because remember, I haven't made any adjustments to my loan yet. They're the same amount. But going forward, after we've made some adjustments to our loan, this will change. Okay, now that we've calculated our interest, let's go and consider the adjustment needed to be made to our loan. Remember, your loan will increase each month by interest and will decrease by the repayment. So let's go and make an adjustment to account for that. So we're going to click on Add Advanced Adjustment. I'm going to select the loan account. We're going to say repayment of loan. We're then going to select a start date, and we're only going to make a payment at the end of the first period. So we're going to make a start in December. We're going to select recurring, and then we'll select an end date, which in my case will just be till the end of the forecast. We're likely going to make repayments every month, so that's what I'm going to select here. And we then need to select a formula so we can go and calculate how much our loan will be after it's increased by our interest rate and been reduced by our payment. So in order to calculate that, we're going to start with last year's loan value. So in order to calculate that, we're going to start with last period's loan balance. So we're going to say last period's loan balance. We're going to look for long-term liability, loan prior. And we're going to reduce that by whatever your loan repayment is. So we've got 19,409.63 in my case, but that would obviously differ depending on the terms of your loan. And then we're going to increase that by the interest that we're going to have to pay. But we're not going to put a value in, we're rather going to link that to the interest in our profit and loss. So we're going to look for interest expense. We're going to select the current interest. And now what's really nice is we've linked the loan and the interest. So if something changes in your interest, say the interest rate changes, then your loan balance will automatically update. And because we linked our interest to our loan, if something changes in your loan value and you repay a part of your loan, then your interest will automatically update. So these two things are interlinked, and if you make any changes, they'll automatically update and be correct. The only thing that isn't really linked is your loan installment, but obviously you can come here and change that in the formula and then it will apply. If this was going to change partway through the forecast, you could always apply this formula to the first so many months and then go and have a new adjustment for the later part of the period where you plan to pay a different amount. So obviously, the more complicated your repayment terms are, the more complicated this formula needs to be, and you might need to break it up into a few formulas. But if you're planning on just paying the same amount each month, then it's as easy as this. We can then click Save, and now you'll see that our loan is decreasing. So if we click into this loan, we get a nice graph where we see we are slowly paying off our loan. It's going to take us a very long time, and we can see how the value is decreasing. If we go back to our profit and loss and we look at our interest expense, we'll see that our interest expense is no longer the same every month. It's also decreasing. And that's because we linked it to the loan balance. And as the loan balance decreases, so too does our interest expense. Okay, so they are the basic principles of how to create interest on your loan linked to whatever the loan balance is, and to record the repayments on your loan linked to whatever your interest rate is. And again, if you already have a loan for the previous period, the principles will still apply. You need to know what your repayment will be going forward, and you need to know your interest rate. And then you can go and replicate these formulas that we've just done together, and you'll be able to do these exact adjustments as part of a bigger forecast.